somebody's trying to ask you to give them like a 15-second answer to a complex question. I mean, there isn't really simple answers to any of the really serious problems that we have.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's an acquired skill to take a complex problem and then derive sort of some basic things that can be said about it, right? But yes, for an academic, it's always very difficult because politicians like simple answers, which we cannot provide, and so much of the testimonies and to try to work like this. So we try to take very good research and try to formulate certain principles that are reasonably easy to understand, right, and that can be implemented without being too simplistic in a way. Yeah. But I think that's an important part of our job as academics is to do this type of reach-out work as well. Yeah.
Well, I have two quick follow-ups, just to follow-ups to what you just said. One, so you've been providing a lot of, first of all, you work in academics, you've provided a lot of testimony to Congress. How do you think the academic community can assist, is there a way the academic community can assist the average citizen one-on-one? I mean, do you think that a lot of the studies you do can actually benefit people in a direct way? I mean, not just through government policy. Is there anything that a person who might be watching this at some point might say that they can take from this, that they really think that they can implement in their own lives in the short term? Or do you think that the most of what you're working on sort of benefits people through government policy?
That's a very, very good question. So a lot of the things we do as economists is thinking about markets, right? And so then it mainly goes about how to structure a market, right? But a lot of things we do is actually about how individuals can decide, should make certain decisions, right? And so there are implications for individual choices. And so one of the things I mentioned earlier is a finding that for, say, college students entering the labor market in recession, there is a long-term recovery process. And this process involves several stages. And so we can say from that, well, here is what the people who are successful in recovering typically do, right? And we can also isolate, here are the people who are most at risk of particularly difficult recovery periods. And so with that knowledge, somebody can go ahead and say, well, here's what I could or should be doing, and here's what my options are, and am I a person who's going to have it very difficult, and so I brace myself, right? So I think that's very important.
I understand. I have a couple questions about public sentiment. I feel that a lot of times public sentiment is based on emotion and unnecessarily, and I'm not pointing to any particular group. I think that all of us have that, at least in a small part of our personality that feels that way. But the first question is, when we have an issue in our country, we very often, instead of trying to figure out what caused the problem, we immediately try to solve whatever the issue is and find whomever is to blame for that particular problem. How do you think as an academic you can attack the problem of really trying, when we have an issue, trying to find the root, the base cause of what that is, as opposed to trying to find quick fix solutions? Is there a way that we can do that? Because, I mean, I feel that so often, by looking at quick fixes, we're never really finding out what caused our issues to begin with. And so we sort of just, sort of like when you have a pothole in the street, you just patch it over really quickly and don't realize that there is decay below. And I feel like there is a lot of decay in our economy right now, and it's because we've sort of just brushed over the issues we've had in the past. Is there a way that we can be more long-sighted?
Well, that's a very good question. So there are, I guess it depends on each of us to get the information that's available out there. So there's an increasing sense that this recession has in sense brought to light something that has been going wrong with the U.S. economy over the last 20 to 30 years. And we're just beginning to putting together the pieces, but more and more people are sort of taking this medium to longer run view. And so as an individual, right, I have the chance to especially the web gives a great opportunity, or shows like these, to tap into the current thoughts and that current thinking. And as more and more of that happens, there's more and more demand for it, and hence, the people in the position of leadership will start thinking about it. I mean, I give you an example. There has been this well-known fact for a few years now, actually two facts. First of all, that especially in the 1990s, there's been a very rapid increase in the share of income going to the top 1%, or even to the top 0.1%, right? And that the share of wealth of the economy is about 30% of wealth is in the top 1% hands, right? So we also knew that since about the early 80s, the average wage has been stagnant or declining, right? So the top 1% of Americans have been doing extremely well, and the median, right, or the average, has had no real wage growth in the last 30 years, or even a wage decline in the last 30 years, right? So these are very impressive facts. But we're now only beginning to really sort of think about the possible consequences for this, right? We've spent a long time spent sort of actually documenting these. But it's very surprising to me, at least, that the public hasn't really been aware of this. And I think the awareness is increasing. And as that's happening, people start to think, well, what are the systemic issues here?
It's funny because between 1946 and 1968, I had read that every economic group in America, and it's probably true in Western Europe as well to a certain extent, grew between 80 and 100%. Between 1980 and 2000, basically only the top couple of economic groups grew, while the others were stagnant or declined, as you had said. So I guess the problem is that we're now aware that these things are happening. I suppose it's trying to implement policies that can help correct them, I suppose.
Well, or at least sort of, there is a sense that we're, in the 1980s and 90s, essentially part of this problem was resolved by increasing indebtedness of the public, right? So you can finance your consumption by taking up credit. Right? And now we realize that, I mean, it's obvious, right? But that was a short-term solution, right? And so now as people are, so the leveraging is getting sort of out of that situation, right? We'll figure out, well, how are they going to finance their living, right? With that stagnant low wages. And the question is, and how did we get there, right? Why has there been this increase in inequality, but also why has the middle or the bottom not grown too, right? And then that will lead us to think about what are firms doing, how are firms doing, why are we producing more, and so on. But all of these systemic issues, I mean, maybe that starts to hope.
Oh shit. Battery died. It's okay.